I'm a 30-year-old male, and back in 2010, I got an invitation from my job in New York to go to the Brazilian rainforest. I would travel to Manaus, the Amazon state capital, meet my guide there, and take a boat along the Amazon River. I was very excited and I could not wait to meet my guide, Carlos, who would take me miles from civilization, deep into the rainforest. My job was potentially life-threatening and very difficult. My organization is very low-key and secret, so I'm not going to mention it. But they make you go to places and take pictures and do research on particular things that are hidden from the world. For my task, they'd already organized my trip to meet Carlos, an expert on the rainforest who was aware of my task and worked in some ways for the company that I worked for. My task was to take pictures and videos of the dangerous tribes in the rainforest, the ones who had no idea us humans were alive. My boss, Raymond, told me that me and Carlos had to do this with specific instruction, or else these tribes would kill us or do things that people have never seen done. When I flew the 25-hour flight from New York City, I arrived the next day at around 7 p.m. I was arranged to meet Carlos at the airport and then spend the night with him at a hotel, and then set out early the next morning. When I stepped off the plane with my suitcase, a random man of around 50 years old, built and strong with dark brown eyes and a full head of hair and beard, approached me. Dang, I thought. His beard reached to his stomach, and I noticed many people staring at him. He smiled at me, and I noticed his yellow teeth. He spoke to me in very broken English. Jan Paul. I nodded. I am Carlos, he said, shaking my hand. I tried to hurry him out of the way because many people were giving us so many looks, and it was making me feel very uncomfortable. Carlos talked the whole way to the hotel in his rusty Honda. He talked to me about the trip and he got very serious. You are aware that we may not make it out alive, right? I knew that and I nodded. I eventually started talking, and by the time we had reached the hotel though, I was nearly asleep. Carlos laughed. Sleep tight. For it's about 5 o'clock, I will wake you. I was too tired to argue, so I just walked to my room and was asleep before I fell on the bed. At exactly 5 a.m., Carlos shook me awake. I groggily accepted some water, and I hurried to get dressed. Soon, me and Carlos had rented a boat and were speeding down the water, growing farther and farther from civilization. As we were going down the river, Carlos said, "We are going to be here about 3 days, and we're going to set up camp in a place about 2 miles from a tribe that some government officials said were nearby. At around dusk, we will quietly go towards their camp and you can do your recordings." I said, "Fine, but what if they see us?" Carlos cut in. "Then we die." I shrugged and I got ready to dock the boat in a clearing in the forest where Carlos told me to. Our camp was large, but after spending the day eating and talking about our journey, we decided not to build a fire in order to not attract the natives. At about 7:30, me and Carlos prepared to go to the forest. Carlos and I set off in the same direction, and after we walked about 500 feet away from our camp, we began to hear muffled voices coming from about 2 miles in front of us. It was loud, but since we were far away, we could not pick up what they were saying. Carlos told me to stay quiet and to adjust the tiny camera on my chest. As we walked about 10 more minutes, Carlos stopped me. Carefully, he pointed out a small hut made of sticks and leaves about 100 feet from us. We hid behind a couple of bushes as eventually, a woman who had hair down to her butt stepped out with a couple of children. These people were completely naked. As we stepped closer, we saw more huts and saw about 20 people huddled around a fire. Only the males had on clothes, but barely. They had only one piece of cloth around their genitals. They soon were dancing and chanting words that had no comprehension. Then, 2 men came out behind another hut. The craziest thing was, they were taking a person by the arm who had a huge mask that resembled a bird. The person in the mask obviously could not see, as they were stumbling around and holding tightly onto the men holding their arms. As I looked closer, I saw all the men around the campfire holding spears that were extremely sharp. I had a feeling what was going to happen next. Carlos said, "Sacrifice," and I saw the horror in his eyes. But then he whispered, "Record this." I positioned the camera shakily in my chest. I forced myself to watch as the man holding the masked person was forced into the fire. The person began to scream an inhuman scream that froze my heart. The sound was so terrifying, so pained, and I was sickened to even see that children were watching as well. I saw other men poking the person with spears in order to make it stay in the fire. I could see the horror on Carlos's face as two men holding spears plunged these sharp points through the victim's heart to finish the job. The masked person screamed, and then he fell limp more into the fire. I had to hold my hand over my mouth in order to not gag. As we watched, the people began to chant and sing, and they praised something, looking up to the sky. The body of the man in the fire was nearly fully in ashes, and when the victim had burned completely to ashes, the chanting stopped. Carlos then said, "Let's go back to camp." I definitely did not object, and very carefully we made our way back to the camp. I did not sleep that night, and I'm sure Carlos did not either. The next morning, I rose without a wink of sleep. Carlos was sitting up in his cot, quietly radioing someone on his earpiece. We agreed to stay here until tonight and go back to the camp at around the same time. When the time came, we made our way back to the tribe's camp. It was around 8 o'clock, but it was easy to see because all the torches and fire around the camp. We hid in the same bushes as the night before, equally hidden but still able to see everything. We watched as one of the natives began screaming into the forest to the right of where the campfire was. To our horror, we watched as something out of this world slithered into the moonlight. This creature was so unearthly and huge that we were just sitting in place, our cameras aimed at the thing. The natives fell on their knees, giving shouts of praise and bowing their heads. There before us was the most colossal snake, or animal for that matter. This snake had to be bigger than a blue whale, and blue whales are over 100 feet. The snake slithered more into view, and its head the size of the front of a semi-truck lifted itself across the ground. It had massive teeth and a mouth so huge it could swallow the biggest dinosaur. The snake resembled a modern-day anaconda, but it had to be over 200 feet long. Me and Carlos lowered our terrified selves lower into the bushes, as if the snake looked our way, it would see us. We barely stuck our heads out as the snake coiled itself on the ground. It was as thick as two elephants standing together. When it raised itself, it raised its head about 50 feet high. The fact that something like this could exist blew my brain, especially due to its size. It should have been spotted by now. By now, no one on Earth knew of its existence other than these natives and me and Carlos. Suddenly, the snake flashed its eyes in our direction. I saw the fatal mistake Carlos made in raising his head a little too much and making a loud, rustling noise. I saw the snake make an unearthly hiss, and 3 men came charging at where Carlos hid. They had not spotted me yet, and I lowered myself completely into the bush where they could not see me, but where I could see them. Carlos screamed and began to run, but a spear hit him in the rear end, and he fell to the ground in pain. The natives grabbed his flailing body and carried him into the camp. The tribe started screaming in what seemed like glee, as 2 men sat on Carlos's body as he screamed his head off. I was so glad that they hadn't seen me yet, but I flinched in horror as one tribesman pretty much ripped all of Carlos's beard off his face, snapping his neck with the force. Carlos screamed in agony for the last time, as the natives got off him just in time to have the massive snake grab Carlos in his jaws. As quick as a wink, the snake swallowed him whole. I took the opportunity to run. Luckily, the people and the snake were distracted as I made it back to the boat just in time to hear screams and chanting. I was experienced in operating motorboats, and I speeded out in a direction that I thought we had come from. I finally made it to a village after 5 hours of speeding down the Amazon. The villagers treated me kindly, and I was taken to a private airport. The pilots flew me to Manaus and ordered me a ticket back to New York. After I had arrived, I went to my business and I showed them the footage. I quit right after, and now I have lived a quiet life in Long Island, writing this story. I have not told anybody but you guys, and that is the way that I'm going to keep it. The one question I have is, what the heck was that thing? That snake? I just hope that it stays in the forest where it belongs. Dear 200-foot snake, stay in the Amazon. The world does not need to know you exist. How to start? I guess with my name, it's Alan White. At the time of writing this, I am 35 and average in every way possible except for one. I'm not from your Earth. I know, crazy right? On my Earth, we called it Terra Sol. I'm a janitor at our version of CERN, and if you would have asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have told you that not much really happens here. I don't really understand the science behind it, but the eggheads supplied clean energy to my world. Unfortunately, as I learned, that is not the only thing that they did. The night this all started, I was covering a shift for my friend, Gareth. He was on his second honeymoon, and I needed the money at the time, and it seemed like a win-win. As you can probably guess, it wasn't. I wasn't used to working or even being up this late. By 3:20 a.m., I was completely exhausted and I still had 5 hours to go. This job isn't the most exciting or glamorous, and the science staff aren't the neatest people in the world. Heck, some were slobs, plain and simple, but most were friendly at least. I just finished cleaning the men's room on the second floor of the lab building, and was about to start in the women's when one of the top eggheads came running up to me. The guy was frantic and struggling to catch his breath. "You okay, Doc?" I asked. No, listen, we don't have," he said as he started coughing. He took out an inhaler and quickly took a puff. After a few seconds, he started again. "Listen, we don't have much time. I need your help. Please follow me to my lab." His name was Dr. Lanton. I didn't know him well. He was a shorter guy, maybe 5'2" or 5'3", with a shiny bald head. The dude looked like he waxed it daily. He was older, how old I'm not sure, but definitely over 60. "Okay, just let me get my cards and I'll..." Before I could finish, he grabbed my arm and started leading me to his lab. I was surprised by how strong he was. Stronger than you would expect from somebody his size and age. By the time I got my arm free, we were at his lab. "What the heck?" I yelled, more surprised than angry. "Listen, we don't have much time. If you don't help me, then we're all dead. It's found us. Here, we have to turn it at the same time. Do you understand? The same time?" He said, clearly freaking out as he handed me an odd-looking key. He had the look of true fear, the kind you only see in a life-and-death situation. "Okay, fine, but what the heck?" He cut me off. "No time. I'll explain after, just please. I can't do this alone." I took a deep breath and I walked over to the console that he had gestured towards and then put the key in. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. We turned our keys in unison, and the whole facility began to shake. I started to panic as the machine in the center of the lab let out a massive wave of energy that sent me flying. It must have knocked me out because the next thing I know, Dr. Landon is kneeling over me taking my pulse. "Oh, thank God, I thought you might be dead. Good job, my boy. We just saved 10.5 billion people. The entire universe, our universe anyway. he said. I'll be honest, I was mad. I always had a temper, and it had a tendency to get me into trouble even as a kid. I had the juvenile court records to prove it. I shot up and I punched the good doctor right in the gut. What in the heck, dude? You better start explaining right now. A look of shock on his face faded, and a smile formed in its place. Well, I suppose I deserve that, he chuckled. He took a deep breath and removed his glasses to rub his eyes. He returned them to their place and began. Well, it's beyond complicated, but I owe you at least that much. He paused for a moment, as though he was considering how to explain a computer to a caveman. I'll be honest, it kind of made me even more upset. After a moment, he began his explanation. Well, near the end of the Great War, a group of scientists from New Victoria picked up a signal from what they thought at the time to be outside of our galaxy. The scientists were trying to scan space as part of a top-secret program. Not sure if they found whatever else they were looking for, but they found this. He walked over to one of the only undamaged terminals in his lab. He pulled up a graph and a bunch of lines of what looked like random numbers and letters. I stared at the terminal with no clue what the heck I was looking at. Landon turned around and said, I know it looks like random gibberish. That's what they thought at first too. It sat in an archive until 1955, when Dr. Martin Xavier III found it. It fascinated him. He spent months poring over every line until he found a pattern. Dr. Landon turned back to the terminal and began to type something in. He continued as he worked. In 1957, Dr. Xavier developed a computer program to convert the data from the signal into an audio file. Part of the data anyway. This is what he found. Landon hit enter and turned back to face me. The audio file began. You aren't alone. Your universe is one of many. We hope our message reaches you before it is too late. We cannot stop it. What the heck? I started before Landon cut me off. Wait, there's more, he said. We send you this, our knowledge of this entity, in the hopes that you may succeed where we failed. As it ended, a chill went up my spine. I was shaking, I don't know why. It was like some primal fear passed down from our ancestors. The rest he thought was static. I began interning with Dr. Xavier in '79. He was convinced that the rest of the data was some kind of plan or guide. It was in fact a schematic for the device that we had just activated. He gestured to the machine in the center of the lab that had knocked me out. And so when Dr. Xavier died in '89, I kept his work going. I built the machines. I watched and waited. When the warning signal went off, I was ready. I'm cautious by nature, and with the advancement of technology we gained from our friends who sent the message, made this. He walked to a door at the back of the lab. He gestured for me to follow. There is a flight of stairs inside. We went down to a sub-basement that I didn't know existed. It was a large open room with large cables all leading to a large machine. They looked like the roots to a giant metal tree. The thing was massive. A half circle of what seemed to be 3 supercomputers. In the center was a large ball-like mechanism. Landon walked to the wall and flipped a large switch. The top half of the ball-like device opened to reveal what appeared to be a cockpit. The doctor walked up beside me. This was Plan B. If all else failed, this would have sent someone to the next reality in its path. I was speechless. When I woke up this morning, my biggest concern was being able to afford rent. The doctor went on. Oh, I'm sorry, I never asked your name. It's Alan White, Dr. Landon. How do you know your device worked? Are you sure that we are safe? I asked, a voice trembling. He laughed and said, You rarely can ever be 100% sure, but I think we're going to be just fine. His reassurance was cut short by an alarm coming from upstairs in the main lab. Landon's face turned pale. He turned and ran up the stairs as I followed. A sense of terror filled me. We reached the lab. Landon began typing something into the terminal and frantically checking other nearby screens. No, I don't understand, he said with a potent mix of dread and urgency in his voice. Doc, what's going on? I thought you said... He stopped me, tears in his eyes. I was wrong, he said, utter despair filling his voice. Once again, he grabbed my arm and we ran back to the sub-basement. Get in the device now and take this. He handed me a flash drive. I'm sending you to the next universe in its path. Hopefully they can succeed where I failed. But why me? I'm just a janitor, a nobody. Shouldn't you go instead? I asked as sheer terror began to fill every fiber of my being. I can't, he said. There's not enough time to teach you how to operate the device, and you can only activate it from the outside. That flash drive has everything required for another scientist to pick up where I left off. I'm sorry, but it's up to you. I couldn't believe it. I wasn't even supposed to be here tonight. I must have been frozen in place from shock. Landon smacked me, snapping me back into action. I jumped into the pod-like seat. As it closed around me, Landon said, "Good luck and Godspeed." As light filled the device, every molecule in my body began to vibrate. The vibration quickly turned into the most intense pain I had ever experienced. It felt as though my entire body was being ripped apart at a subatomic level, and for the second time in an hour, I fell unconscious. When I came to, I was here on your Earth. For 2 weeks I have searched. I can't find a computer that is compatible with the flash drive. To make matters worse, your Earth, your technology, it's all wrong. As far as I can tell, you are about 1,000 years less advanced as we were on Terra Sol, my Earth. The most advanced thing I've seen was in the Ancient History Museum on my Earth. I'm making my way to your capital, a place called DC. Maybe someone there can help. God, I hope someone there can help. I don't know what this thing is or why it's doing this. All I know is that my Earth is gone, dead, and that your Earth is next.